chapter 4, in reading with verse 13. Esther 4:13. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, "Think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another source." I'll try to remember to make a comment on that when we get there. From another place, but thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed, and who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer: "Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish." So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. Thus far, we have seen that wicked Haman has succeeded in getting a law passed to kill every single Jew. And by single, I don't mean single versus married. I mean every Jew within the 127 provinces of the king. The 12th month, the 13th day, it will be legal for everybody to kill any Jews that you know, any Jews in your neighborhood, any Jews around you. On that day, it will be perfectly legal to kill every single Jew. The decree had gone out, and as the decree went out, it caused much sorrow among the Jews. Mordecai sends word to Esther that she must act on behalf of her people, and all she can do is make excuses. And I'm not going to rehash all of that, but there are still people today, when you ask them to do something, all they know how to do is make excuses. You know, this is not in my notes, but I'll just throw it in extra. I find that many people can do what they want to do. But when it comes to church, what they want to do is make excuses. I've known people to climb mountains, to do all kinds of physical exertion things. But when it comes to church, I sprained my little finger, and I've got to stay home and nurse my little finger. I'll tell you one of my wife's pet peeves, and she has done this with me, and I have encouraged her. When I've had surgery, she'll stay with me for a couple of days until I can at least make it to the kitchen, get something to drink, maybe something to eat, The moment I can take care of myself, and it's on Sunday, I instruct her and she wants to, she comes to church. She doesn't need to be there to blow my nose for me, to wipe my nose for me, or to hold my hand when I'm able. And her pet peeve is little Junior is sick and the whole entire family has to stay home and blow his nose for him. It's easy to make excuses. Easy to make excuses. Well, moving on, Mordecai in tonight's lesson answers her excuse. And as we'll see, he answers her excuse, tells her, listen, don't you think for one moment that when the 13th day of the 12th month comes, that you will be spared. By now, a lot of people know you are Jewish. And there are people who will hate you for no other reason and who will find a way to get into the palace and kill you right along with all the other Jews in the 127 provinces. Now, the word prayer is not used in tonight's lesson. In fact, the word prayer is not used anywhere in the book of Esther, nor is there a reference, a direct reference to God. The name of God is not used anywhere in the book of Esther. But as we'll see tonight, God and prayer are clearly implied, even if we don't mention them by name. My points are very simple. I've got two main points. Mordecai's answer is, you are as much at risk as any Jew in the country. In verse 13, don't think for a minute that because you're the queen and you live in the palace that you will be spared. Read it. Think not within thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. Sometimes we feel like that we are, and I'm trying to think of a good word besides Brother Gormley. Sometimes we think that we're immune to trouble because of who we are, and what position we hold. I'm a Christian. I'm a child of God. My Father is not going to let anything bad happen to me. Esther, I'm the queen. I'm the wife of the king. I live in the palace with guards all around 24/7. Nothing can happen to me because of who I am and what position I hold. And Mordecai said, not true, honey. Just because you're queen, just because you live in the palace, just because you're surrounded by Secret Service, doesn't mean that somebody won't get to you. Just because I'm a Christian, I'm a child of God, I'm an heir of God, I'm a joint heir with Jesus Christ. I enjoy the highest position that anybody on earth can enjoy, but that does not mean that I'm immune from suffering and pain and a lot of other things. Esther, you're putting your confidence in your position. That's dangerous. Esther, you're putting your confidence in the Secret Service. That's a dangerous position. Several years ago, well, it's been many years ago, my wife and I were in D.C., and we actually went to the theater where Abraham Lincoln was shot. The actual theater, they showed, I had to stop and think who he was. They showed us the actual room up to where we were, up to the right on the upper level, the very room that President Lincoln was shot in. And there were police, there were guards, there were all kinds of precautions to protect the president. And yet John Wilkes Booth managed, and they showed us how he did it. He managed to get in to the president's secret private quarters and shoot and kill the president. Doesn't matter who you are or where you are or how safe you think you are, what position you hold, and what extremes you've taken to make yourself safe. You are not immune to problems and cares and troubles and illness. Esther, you think you're okay because you're queen. You think nobody can harm you because you're surrounded by guards. Esther, if God doesn't intervene on the 12th month, the 13th day, you will be just as dead as everyone else. Now, he makes a comment in verse 14, and I'm not going to get into it, but just a very, very little. Notice he said, and I'm paraphrasing, God will save his people. You and all your kindred will be destroyed along with all the other Jews. And it isn't just you, it's your entire family. This is the first mention we've got of her having family other than Mordecai. But he said, your father's house and all your kindred will be killed if God doesn't intervene. But, and here's the great big but, God made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that covenant was an everlasting covenant. God chose Abraham and made an everlasting covenant with Abraham that you and your seed will be my people for everlasting. I said, that's going to end when the rapture. No, that's an everlasting covenant that God made, which means Haman is not going to succeed. God made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and nobody is going to annihilate the Jews. God will, some way, somehow, there shall then shall there be enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews. I know circumstances look bad, but God will make a way. I don't know if it's a song or if I just heard a sermon somewhere. I think there's a song, but it says, I've read the back of the book and we win. Think about that. You know, you read in the last days, perilous times shall come. You read the description of the last days, how that Jesus said, if you love me, if you serve me, you're going to suffer persecution. But if you go to the back of the book, you find out that Satan is thrown in. Well, first of all, Satan is chained for 1,000 years. At the end of the 1,000 years, Satan will be thrown into the lake of fire. And that's the end of Satan. How many of you have ever read a mystery book? Several of you. Okay, I've read a few. And you read the book and it's like, my wife likes to watch a lot of mysteries, so I watch them with her. They're old, and they're clean. There's no boys kissing, no girls kissing, no profanity, no pornography, no immorality. And we'll watch it together, and it's like, who do you think did it? Who do you think committed the murder? Well, I think it's this one because of this and this. Well, I think it's going to be this one because, and when we get to the end, it's not who either one of us thought it was going to be. That's the way it is with life. Sometimes we wonder, why is God doing this? Why is God permitting this? But I've read the last chapter. I've read the back of the book. I know who did it. I know the answer to the mystery. Things look bad. Esther, God shall raise deliverance. God shall raise an enlargement, and God shall deliver his people because he made a covenant with Abraham. He confirmed it with Isaac, and he confirmed it again with Jacob. God made a covenant, and I know God is going to deliver his people. It's kind of like you and I. See, before God created the heavens and the earth, before God spoke creation into existence, God made a covenant with Jesus Christ. And I don't know how the covenant took place, but it went something like this. Son, here's a list of names. I chose every one of these names, and I'm giving these names to you as an everlasting covenant. And God the Father and God the Son, along with God the Holy Spirit, sealed that covenant. These are the people that God gave to Jesus Christ. Every one that cometh unto me, I shall in no wise cast out. Every one the Father gave me shall come unto me. Every name that God gave to Christ, he gave it with an oath. These people shall be your gift for all eternity. Now, I know things look bad. You might say, and there's a sign. Back when I was taking my grandson to the gym every morning with me, a lady had this great big huge sign. It's probably at least 4 by 8, 4 feet by 8 foot, not 4 inches. Huge sign, and it said, "Thank God for President Trump." And I'm thankful that the other person did not win. But you know what? My salvation doesn't depend on who the president is. My salvation doesn't depend on Republicans versus Democrats. My salvation depends on the covenant that God made with Jesus Christ, wrote their names down in the book of life, wrote every single name in the book of life before the foundation of the world. And God made a covenant, and God cannot and will not break that covenant. Aren't you afraid of losing your salvation? No, I'm really not, because God made a covenant. Esther, Haman has succeeded in getting a law passed. But you know what? God shall deliver his people. Why? Because he made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, the question comes down, by what means shall God keep his covenant? He asked a couple of questions. Who knoweth? Let me find it. Verse 14. Then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another source. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And here's the question that Mordecai asked. Who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Esther, the death of your parents was to bring you to this moment. You're being sent to me instead of someone else in your father's household. You being sent to me was to prepare you for this very moment. Me getting a job as a palace guard was preparing you for this very moment. You being chosen queen was no accident. God was preparing you for this very moment. Your whole life has been working together to bring you to this point in history. And perhaps the very reason that God has brought you to this moment is so that you can intervene on behalf of your people. You certainly have been placed in a position to act. If a palace guard walked in, king probably may not even, in fact, we know he did not know Mordecai at this time. He doesn't meet Mordecai until later. If Mordecai walked in, they would have cut his head off immediately. If a Jew had walked in, they would have cut his head off immediately. Had anyone else walked in, they probably would have had their head cut off. Esther, you are in a unique position to do something that nobody else can do, and that's go in to the king's private chambers. And God has prepared your whole life. Everything that has happened prior to this, God has used to bring you to this moment in time. You have a golden opportunity to serve Christ in a way that no one else has that opportunity. Now, I've had people, not recently, but we had some members years ago. And the lady asked me one day, she said, and I'm paraphrasing because it's been 10 or 15 years ago. She said, I can't sing. I can't teach Sunday school. And she listed all the things that she can't do. And she said, what good am I to the church? What have I got to offer? And she had a long list of things she could not do. And I said, well, first of all, God has spared you up till now for a reason. That means there's something that God has uniquely prepared you to do. God didn't bring you through, I don't know how old she was, but whatever it was, God has not spent 30, 40, 50, 60 years bringing you to this spot unless he has something for you to do. Instead of looking at everything you can't do, try looking for what God has prepared you to do. I don't think God has brought any of us here by pure accident. I was born with a specific purpose in mind by God. We had lunch today and had a server. He's only been with this restaurant for a month, so it's like, oh, this is going to be fun. So he asked me, he said, y'all having a good weekend, relaxing, doing nothing? And I said, not me. He said, why not? I said, I'm a pastor, and Sunday is my hardest day. And then he asked a question that took me back a few steps. He said, how did you decide to be a pastor? And it's like, how do you explain to a Catholic how that God saved you, God called you, God moved you? Even when God moved me to Ohio, he was preparing me to pastor Grace Baptist Church or is it Faith now? Grace Baptist Church in Florence, Kentucky. When he moved us to Texas, he was preparing. I had no clue. I did not have a clue. In fact, I was here the day the church was organized under Brother Ginn. Had no clue. Never in my wildest imagination did I ever even think that someday God would put me here as pastor. God moved us to Texas. Well, things that happened in Ohio was preparing me for Grace Baptist Church. In Texas, it's like, God, why are 2 churches in a row? Why are you doing this to me? We had some major battles. And it's like, Lord, I don't understand. God was preparing me for Grace Baptist Church in Florence. We spent a year between Texas and here. God was preparing me because during that year, I traveled out of 52 Sundays. I preached somewhere other than our home church at least 51 Sundays that year. And during that time, I was promoting printing, and a lot of the support that we have today in the printing is because of that year that I was on the road preaching. Did we ever get back to our home church? My wife says, yeah, once or twice in that year. Even then, God was preparing us with sufficient support to build the print shop, and now we are influencing people all over the world. I didn't know that's what God was doing. And I bet if we looked at your life, you can go back in your life and begin to see how that my parents died. I was raised by a cousin. My cousin got a job as a palace guard. I hope, if nothing else, you begin to look at your life not as a bunch of accidents happening to get you here, but as God planned and God purposed every step of my life to bring me to Grace Baptist Church in Florence. If you learn to look at things that way, it changes your whole perspective. One of the servers, as we were leaving, she stopped me and was talking. And she said, "You have a good day, hon." And I said, "I have a good day every day." And she kind of looked at me and I said, "With God in control, how can it be bad?" Oh, but you don't know the pain. You don't know, the heartbreak. You don't know all the problems I've had. Well, you don't know everything my wife and I have been through. But everything that God permitted in our life, in our marriage, was to prepare us for this day, this time, and this place. Esther, God has given you an opportunity. You can be a blessing and receive a blessing, or you can refuse. Either way, God's going to save his people. So the question boils down, do you want God to use you and you receive a blessing? Or do you want enlargement and deliverance from another place and you lose a blessing and an opportunity to serve God? Which it going to be, Esther? You going to choose to be used of God, or are you going to put yourself first? God's going to accomplish his will. Paul describes it this way. Every man shall give an account of the deeds done in the body. Some people build their life with gold, silver, and precious stones. Some people build their life with wood, hay, and stubble. Now you can make that money, power, position, whatever you think of wood, hay, and stubble. They're both going to be tried by fire. In one case, the wood, hay, and stubble burns up and there's nothing left but ashes. You're still saved. You don't lose your salvation, but you lose all the rewards you could have had. Esther, the choice is yours. You want to build on gold, silver, and precious stones? Or do you want to build your life on safety and security and ease and comfort? We have to make that choice almost every day. Am I going to serve God today, or am I going to take the easy way? Well, Esther concedes and agrees to act. But before I put my life on the line, I want every Jew in Shushan to spend 3 days fasting. It doesn't say they prayed, but I go home, look it up. Every time fasting is mentioned, it's always associated with prayer. And by the way, fasting is not just, I think I'm going to fast today. I need to lose a few pounds anyway, so I'll fast and show how religious I am. That's not what fasting. Fasting, Jesus said fasting and prayer. Fasting and prayer. You're not just not eating for a day. You're so busy engulfed in prayer that you don't even think about eating. You're all consumed with prayer, so that food is not even in your mind. I want 3 days of fasting and prayer. Then she makes probably one of the greatest statements in the Bible. After we have fasted and prayed, I will go in to the king. And here's the phrase that in my mind has become immortal. If I perish, I perish. If I get killed, at least I get killed serving God. If I perish, I will perish serving God. Now, she recognizes finally that her whole life has prepared her for this moment. Whatever happens, if the king welcomes me or if the king has me killed, my faith and trust is in God, not in the king. I have no reason to expect the king to hold out the golden scepter. There is no previous example. There is no precedent for the king, for me to expect the king to hold out the golden scepter. But I'm willing to trust God and do what's right, whatever the consequences. Now, we'll have to wait till chapter 5 to see whether the king held out the golden scepter or not. Not just once, but twice. But my question for us, and I can't do it for you. Go back and look at things in your life, some of which you thought was a tragedy that you will never get over. I got fired. I was president, CEO, and they fired me. That's not fair. Maybe God got you fired to move you to a better place so that you could better serve Him. What brought you to Grace Baptist Church? Me, it was, I'm trying to think, almost 15 years of preparation to bring me to Grace Baptist Church. And even then, I really did not want to come at first. What has God done in your life to bring you to this very moment? Now, am I going to use this moment to serve God, or am I going to use this moment to take care